All right. Today we're talking about Joe Rogan, famous podcaster, comedian, somewhat of a media mogul individual. And we're going to be looking into his soul, doing a nice little analysis. First, using psychology, the mind. Then we're using astrology to look at his current patterns and spiritual evolution he's meant to undertake in his incarnation. And finally, alchemy, the transformational process I would recommend to him if you were my client. Starting off with psychology, like we always do, Psychonaut. There is a particular type of person, and I am one of them, who tries to achieve higher states of consciousness through substances. In this instance, psychedelic substances. So a psychonaut is just somebody who really likes psychedelics to expand their awareness and understanding of the world and themselves, right? Now, Joe Rogan's a little bit more of a Western type of psychonaut in the sense that he focuses on things like DMT, marijuana, and shrooms. I personally love shrooms. I have nothing bad to say. I think LSD as well. He avoids more holistic, powerful medicines like ayahuasca. I think there's a reason for that because he has a hyper-masculine mentality, and ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca, to be exact, is very feminine in her energy. Even LSD, it's artificial, doesn't really have a gender, energy profile. And then shrooms are going to be masculine. So he's made sure to smoke DMT, to do LSD, to take shrooms, which don't really push him into his feminine, and focus on and avoid things like Mother Ayahuasca that truly humbles the arrogant masculine energy that a lot of men have, myself included. But anyway, the fact that he's a psychonaut means that he has an expansive awareness. It does also come with its downsides, though, because you are artificially expanding your consciousness, not doing it through natural means. So it can create somebody who can be delusional, conspiracy theorist, delusions of grandeur, ego expansion. There's a lot of things that come with that. I've dealt with all of it. And anyone who's done psychedelics a lot has maneuvered those choppy waters. He's consistent. People don't really know, but Joe Rogan has had his podcast for like 15 years, or he was one of the first people to get into the podcast game because he liked it. He was able to follow his inspiration naturally. He was just naturally gravitated towards sitting in a room, speaking into a mic with people he found interesting or people he liked and thought of his friends, right? But he's been doing it for so long. He just comes in and consistently, day in and day out, does the work that's needed. And after like 10 years, it finally paid off. Most people are not willing to do something for 10 years consistently without some kind of return. I know I have trouble with that. So the average person for sure struggles with being that long-term consistent. And that's mostly to do with his sun in Leo. Dogmatic. So this is kind of a product of being a psychonaut because you have your ego and awareness expanded artificially. You can attach certain ideas, certain beliefs very strongly because of this kind of delusional, artificial expansion. Ego inflation is the way to think about it. And with ego inflation comes dogma. And so there are times where you can see Joe Rogan attach himself to a belief, attach himself to a perspective or an idea very, very strongly. And honestly, I can relate to this to a certain degree. I mean, I'm not like a religious fundamentalist. I'm spiritual. I don't ascribe towards a particular religion. I actually think he's similar in that instance. I don't think he is necessarily attached to one of the major denominations or, conventional religion, but you can see how Joe Rogan does have certain beliefs that he holds on strongly, and when he's presented evidence of the contrary, you can see him kind of feign ignorance or purposely divert his attention away so he doesn't have to see something that is contrary to what he believes. Finally, gullible. He's self-proclaimed as being a dumb idiot. He uses self-deprecating humor or comments. You can kind of see how he treats himself, which is a little bit poorly. And you can see how he has certain people come on to his podcast and they can kind of say whatever they want. And he just kind of goes along with it because he doesn't really think of himself as an intellectual up here, but deep down he does have strong convictions that he does believe in. He just presents himself as if he doesn't really know what he's talking about, and he doesn't really believe that he knows what he's talking about. But there is a solid basis of conviction about what his beliefs, but there's also an ability to be swayed. And you could see over time how his beliefs have very much shifted. So even though his actions are consistent, and there's this core energy, this core essence that is very consistent when it comes to Joe Rogan, there's also this ability to be swayed by certain people he finds interesting, fascinating, smarter than him, quote unquote. Now let's go to the astrology. So, as we always do, South Node Ketu, North Node Rahu axis, the path of our consciousness as we move along, whatever incarnation we were living. Hello? For him, he has Ketu, Moon, and Mars together in Scorpio, very painful sign, with Rahu, North Node, in Taurus. So let's start with Ketu, the South Node. South Node is where we are most karmically comfortable, the place of the chart that we have spent a lot of time working on over many incarnations, not just one. Rahu, North Node, is the area of the chart that we need to develop to balance out our energies. It's in Taurus. So Scorpio is all about survival. It's a very willful, powerful sign. It can be also lustful and intense, passionate, and deeply emotional. When you have the moon here, where it's debilitated, you have somebody who has a lot of inner demons and a lot of emotional intensity that is difficult for them to maneuver. But he does have Ketu here, so he's used to being in that Scorpio energy. He's familiar there, so it's not as uncomfortable as it can be for some people, except for the fact that he has Mars here. So Mars is the Lord of Scorpio. So you have the Lord of Scorpio with Ketu. So the Lord of Ketu too is Mars, so it's with Ketu. But together, when you have a malefic and Ketu, it shames the planet it's with. So it's shaming Moon. What does that mean? It means that Joe Rogan is all about action. Mars is action, will, strength, power, warrior, fighter, or Mars is the fighter. It means that he's all about action, masculine energy. Mars is also very masculine, action-oriented, fulfilling his needs through doing, but not enough focusing on being and nurturing himself in a motherly way. So Moon represents the mother. Mars actually also represents the mother. So Moon represents the mother in her passive form, in her nurturing form, when you're doing skin-to-skin contact, when you're feeling connected and bonded with the mother. Mars is the mother in action when she's doing things for you to provide. So most likely when Joe Rogan was growing up, his mother might have been a single mother. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if she was a single mother, this would be a classic case where the mother has to work hard to provide for her son, provide for the family, and has to work, has to do a lot of things, but doesn't have enough time to sit down and be and emotionally connect with her child. So there's a separation trauma happening when Joe Rogan was younger, for whatever reason. And because of that shaming there, that means it was really intense and heavy. So from Joe Rogan's perspective, things like emotional nurturing, self-care, self-love, skin-to-skin contact, and truly connecting with the world in a genuine way is belittled in his mind. He thinks he has to be hard and tough and a warrior and persevere and willfully push through instead of being soft and light at times when that's what human beings need at some time. We don't always have to be fighting. We don't always have to be resisting. We don't always have to be doing cold showers and doing tough man things and pounding our chest and being masculine all the time. Sometimes you can just hang out, be a person, and nurture yourself, care for yourself, love yourself, not always put yourself down or be hard on yourself. Joe Rogan is extremely tough on himself because in his mind, he's always fighting for survival, whether he's aware of it or not. He's always pushing, because he feels like if he doesn't, he will die. It's kind of like a shark deep down. Andrew Tate doesn't have a similar planetary permutation or formation, but there's a similar mindset of like this drive to constantly do. And if you stop, everything's gonna crumble around you. So Taurus is all about resourcefulness, material comforts, pleasure, sensuality, luxuries. So enjoying the finer things in life, enjoying comforts, enjoying the material world and connecting with the material world is needed for him. Even refinements in aesthetics and art and just being, honestly, balancing his energy out to be more feminine, to be less emotionally intense and willful and just letting go and surrendering. Because also with Ketu and Moon, somebody that's very emotionally uptight. So that means he's repressing a lot of that shame. He's repressing certain emotions, which from my perspective is probably his weakness and insecurities, and puts himself down unnecessarily. So what would I recommend if you're my client? What is the alchemic process, the transformation process that would be best for him to move forward and live a more balanced and spiritually evolved life? First, heal inner child. So the moon represents our early years, moon and Mars, and so there's a shaming happening with both in Scorpio, which is a tough sign of our inner demons. So he's got some inner demons, he's got trauma, he's got fears and insecurities and negative emotions he's not addressing. And he's holding on tight, he's really gripping. You can see it in his face and you can see it in his actions. He's very tight and wound up. So heal inner child, going inside of himself to connect with this weak, vulnerable, traumatized, sad, disconnected part of himself that needs to just be loved and accepted. I feel like whenever Joe Rogan calls himself a dumb idiot or says he doesn't know anything or calls himself stupid, it's directed towards this part of himself and it has to be painful. So healing inner child, positive affirmations, looking in a mirror and just saying nice things to himself. I think he's really used to putting himself down and belittling his needs and his desires and his emotions and his feelings. It's time to do the counter or do the opposite of that. And to him, I know he would think it's so cheesy, corny, woo-woo, bullshit. He would hate it, but that's some kind of more reason why he needs to do it, because it's something that he's very much resisting doing, which is showing himself love, acceptance, and approval, giving himself that validation instead of seeking it in the material from other people. Finally, self-love in a feminine way. He does like cold showers and works out and takes, TRT, and that's like his form. It's a very manly form of self-care, which is not bad, and that's a lot of, that's what Scorpio is. It's all about being tough and willful and resilience and survival of the fittest energy with that Mars there. But you kind of need a spa day, my guy. Maybe do some yoga to get flexible, massage, to loosen up a little bit, not be so tight and wound up, but letting go and surrendering. Do some self-care, dressing nice, not having to be in hunting clothes all the time, refining himself a little bit, focusing and developing those Venusian aspects of life, the feminine aspects of life, feeling things so he can balance himself out, because he's very much a bro. And, I don't think anyone's a monolith. I don't think anybody's singularly good or bad. He has great qualities and he also has some negative qualities. I also have good qualities and bad qualities. I am human. So I think if he develops his Venusian parts of himself, his inner child, lets go, beautifies himself a little bit, does some self-care, hangs out with his wife, maybe goes to the spa with her, go on vacation to a nice little, hot tub area or something and just relax, he will be a lot happier after he breaks through that initial resistance. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Also, if you'd like to heal your inner child, doing a step-by-step process that I do with my clients, you can get the guide, the link in the description, transformation guide. And I'd love to hear your comments, critiques, or your analysis on Joe Rogan if you'd like to share. Thank you.